Introduction. Have you ever walked away from a conversation wishing you had said something differently? Maybe the right words came to you 10 minutes later. Maybe you stayed quiet because you were afraid of sounding foolish. Or perhaps you spoke with confidence, but somehow your message didn't reach the other person the way you intended. If you've experienced any of those moments, you're not alone. Almost everyone has. Speaking well isn't something that only a few lucky people are born with. It isn't about having the biggest vocabulary or the loudest voice. It isn't about sounding like a professor or giving speeches on a stage. Research suggests that powerful communication is much simpler than most people imagine. It's about understanding people. It's about understanding yourself. And it's about learning how the human mind naturally responds to words, emotions, and body language. That's what this audiobook is about. Over the next several chapters, we're going to explore the psychology behind smart communication. We'll discover why some people seem naturally persuasive while others struggle to express even their best ideas. You'll learn why confidence doesn't always come before speaking. Sometimes confidence grows because you choose to speak. You'll discover why people remember stories more than facts, why listening often makes you sound smarter than talking, why silence can be more powerful than another sentence, and why the smartest communicators don't try to impress people. They try to connect with them. Now, before we begin, I'd like you to think about someone you've met who always seemed easy to listen to. Perhaps it was a teacher, a grandparent, coworker, a friend. What made them memorable? Was it their intelligence? Maybe, but chances are it was something deeper. They made you feel comfortable. They made complicated ideas seem simple. They listened without rushing. They chose their words carefully. And after talking with them, you probably felt understood. Psychologists observe that people often judge conversations less by what was said and more by how those conversations made them feel. That may sound surprising. After all, we usually focus on the words, but emotions quietly guide our memories. Years from now, someone may not remember every sentence you spoke today, but they will often remember whether you made them feel respected, heard, or valued. Take a moment to think about that. Communication is not only about transferring information. It's about creating experiences. And once you understand that idea, speaking becomes much less stressful. Instead of asking yourself, "What clever thing should I say?" you begin asking, "How can I help this person understand me?" That small shift changes everything. Throughout this audiobook, I'll also share small stories. Some are inspired by everyday experiences. Others are fictional but based on situations that millions of people experience. Because sometimes a simple story teaches more than a long explanation. So settle in. There's no need to rush. This isn't a race. The goal isn't to become someone else. The goal is to become the clearest, calmest, and most thoughtful version of yourself. Now, let's begin with one of the biggest misunderstandings about smart communication. Chapter 1. Smart people don't try to sound smart. Imagine two people introducing themselves at a meeting. The first person uses complicated words, long explanations, technical terms. They seem determined to prove how intelligent they are. The second person speaks clearly. They use simple language. They smile naturally. They explain their ideas in a way that everyone understands. After the meeting ends, who do you think most people remember? Studies show that clear communicators are often viewed as more intelligent than those who make simple ideas sound complicated. That's interesting, isn't it? Many of us spend years believing the opposite. We think sounding smart means using difficult words. But psychology tells a different story. Our brains appreciate clarity. When information is easy to understand, people naturally feel more comfortable with the speaker. That feeling creates trust. And trust is one of the foundations of powerful communication. Here's a simple example. Imagine a doctor speaking to a patient. One doctor fills every sentence with medical terminology. The patient leaves feeling confused. Another doctor explains exactly the same condition using everyday language. The patient leaves feeling informed and confident. Which doctor appears wiser? Probably the second one. Not because they know more, but because they know how to communicate what they know. Research suggests that true expertise often makes people simplify their explanations rather than complicate them. Experts understand ideas deeply enough to explain them clearly. People who are unsure sometimes hide behind complexity. Now, you might be wondering, if I use simple language, won't people think I'm less intelligent? It's a fair question. The answer is usually no. Think about your favorite teachers. Did they impress you because they used difficult words? Or because they made difficult subjects easy to understand? Most of us remember teachers who removed confusion, not teachers who added more. Here's where it gets interesting. The human brain is constantly trying to save energy. Every conversation requires mental effort. When someone speaks clearly, your brain relaxes. When someone speaks in confusing ways, your brain works harder. Without realizing it, people begin associating that extra effort with the speaker. Sometimes they even stop listening. Not because the speaker lacks knowledge, but because understanding becomes exhausting. Let's look at a small story. Several years ago, a young employee named Daniel started his first office job. Daniel was intelligent. He had studied hard. He knew his field well, but every meeting felt like a competition. Whenever he spoke, he filled his sentences with technical language. He believed this would earn respect. At first, people nodded politely, but something strange happened. His coworkers rarely asked him questions afterward. Managers often chose someone else to explain projects. Daniel couldn't understand why. One afternoon, an older colleague invited him for coffee. After a few minutes of conversation, the colleague smiled and said, "You know a lot, but sometimes you're trying so hard to sound intelligent that people stop hearing your ideas." Daniel was surprised. He had never considered that possibility. Over the following months, he changed one habit. Before speaking, he asked himself one question. If someone outside my profession heard this, would they understand me? If the answer was no, he simplified his explanation. Slowly, people started paying closer attention. Meetings became easier. Coworkers asked for his opinion. Managers trusted him with presentations. His knowledge hadn't changed. Only his communication had. Psychologists observe that people are drawn toward speakers who reduce uncertainty. Clear communication makes others feel safe. Confusing communication creates distance. This doesn't mean you should avoid learning new words. Vocabulary is valuable. There are situations where precise language matters. But smart communicators choose words based on the listener, not based on their own desire to impress. Think about a bridge. The purpose of a bridge isn't to show how complicated engineering can be. The purpose is to help people cross safely. Language works the same way. Words are bridges between minds. The best bridges are reliable, simple, strong, easy to cross. Here's another everyday example. Imagine explaining how to make tea. You could say, initiate thermal activation of aqueous molecules before introducing processed botanical derivatives. Or you could simply say, boil the water first, then add the tea. Both sentences describe the same action, but only one helps people immediately. Communication is measured by understanding, not by complexity. Take a moment to reflect on your own conversations. Have there been times when you tried too hard to sound impressive? Most people have. It's a natural instinct. We all want to be respected. We all want others to recognize our abilities. But here's an important truth. People rarely admire those who constantly prove their intelligence. They admire those who make others feel intelligent. That's a remarkable difference. When someone explains an idea so clearly that you suddenly understand it, you don't think, that person is showing off. You think, that person really knows what they're talking about. Research suggests that humility often increases credibility. People trust communicators who appear confident without appearing arrogant. Confidence says, I know this subject. Arrogance says, I need you to know that I know. Those are very different messages. And listeners notice the difference, even if they can't explain why. As we move through this audiobook, you'll discover that powerful communication isn't about collecting clever phrases. It's about understanding how people think, how they feel, and how they naturally respond. Because once you understand psychology, your words begin working with the human mind instead of against it. Take a slow breath. Think about one conversation you'll have today, perhaps with a family member, a friend, coworker, or even a stranger. As you speak, try one simple experiment. Choose clarity over complexity. Choose connection over impressing. You may be surprised by how differently people respond. And this is only the beginning. In the next chapter, we'll explore a surprising truth that many people overlook. Why the smartest people in the room often spend less time talking and more time listening. Chapter 2. The hidden power of listening. Before we move into the next idea, I'd like you to think back to a conversation that made you feel genuinely appreciated. Not because someone gave you advice, not because they solved your problem, but simply because they listened. Perhaps you finished speaking and noticed they didn't interrupt. They didn't rush to tell their own story. They weren't checking their phone. For those few minutes, you felt like the most important person in the room. Research suggests that experiences like these leave lasting impressions. People naturally remember those who make them feel heard. Now, here's something that surprises many people. When we think about becoming better communicators, we usually focus on speaking. We search for better words. We practice confidence. We work on our voice. But psychologists observe that one of the strongest signs of intelligence isn't speaking brilliantly. It's listening deeply. That may sound simple, but true listening is much rarer than we imagine. Why most people aren't really listening. Imagine two friends sitting together at a cafe. One begins talking about a difficult week at work. The other nods politely, but inside their mind, something different is happening. They're already planning what they'll say next. They're waiting for the first pause. As soon as it comes, they jump in. "Oh, that reminds me of what happened to me last month." Without meaning to, the conversation changes direction. The first friend smiles, but something feels incomplete. They weren't looking for another story. They were hoping someone would understand theirs. Studies show that many conversations follow this pattern. People don't always listen to understand. They listen to respond. There's an important difference. Listening to respond means your attention stays mostly on yourself. Listening to understand means your attention stays on the other person. That small shift changes everything. The conversation that changed my perspective. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, I imagined a man named Michael. Michael worked in a busy office. He believed he was an excellent communicator. Whenever coworkers came to him with problems, he immediately offered solutions. If someone mentioned stress, he suggested time management techniques. If someone complained about a disagreement, he explained how he would handle it. He genuinely wanted to help. Yet something puzzled him. People rarely returned to him for advice. One afternoon, a colleague quietly said, "You always have good answers." Michael smiled. Then the colleague continued, "But sometimes I wish you'd let me finish before trying to fix everything." That sentence stayed with him. He realized something uncomfortable. He had confused listening with waiting for his turn to speak. The following week, he tried something different. When someone shared a problem, he resisted the urge to interrupt. He stayed quiet. He nodded. He asked questions. "What happened next? How did that make you feel? What do you think you'll do?" Something remarkable happened. People talked longer. They smiled more. Several thanked him afterward. Oddly enough, he had spoken far less. Yet people appreciated him much more. Research suggests that people often value feeling understood before receiving advice. Understanding comes first. Solutions come second. Silence isn't empty. Many people fear silence. The moment a conversation pauses, they rush to fill it. Maybe you've done this yourself. Someone asks a question. You answer. A few seconds pass. The silence feels uncomfortable. So you keep talking. You explain more. Then even more. Before long, you've said twice as much as you intended. Psychologists observe that silence often feels longer to the speaker than to the listener. What feels like an awkward pause may actually be a perfectly natural moment for someone else. Here's where it gets interesting. Silence gives people space to think. It allows emotions to settle. It invites reflection. Sometimes the most meaningful part of a conversation happens after a pause. Imagine asking a close friend, "How have you really been lately?" They hesitate. For a few seconds, neither of you speaks. Then they quietly say, "Honestly, it's been harder than I expected." That answer might never have appeared if you had rushed to fill the silence. Sometimes silence opens doors that words cannot. Listening builds trust faster than talking. Think about someone you deeply trust. Now ask yourself, do they always have the perfect advice? Probably not. Do they always know exactly what to say? Maybe not. But chances are, they listen, they pay attention, they remember little details, they make eye contact. They don't make every conversation about themselves. Studies show that trust grows when people feel genuinely understood. That's why effective leaders often ask more questions than they answer. Great teachers encourage students to think aloud. Skilled managers invite opinions before sharing their own. Strong friendships grow through curiosity, not constant talking. The simple habit that changes conversations. Here's a practical exercise you can begin today. The next time someone tells you something important, don't immediately share your opinion. Instead, ask one more question. Only one. For example, if a friend says, "My interview didn't go well," instead of saying, "You'll do better next time," try asking, "What part felt most difficult?" Or, "What do you think happened?" Notice what changes. The conversation becomes deeper. The other person feels respected. And you'll probably learn something you didn't expect. Curiosity is one of the quiet superpowers of smart communication. People enjoy talking with those who help them discover their own thoughts. A father and his daughter. Here's another story. A father noticed his teenage daughter becoming unusually quiet. Every evening he asked, "How was school?" Every evening she answered, "Fine." He became frustrated. He assumed she simply didn't want to talk. One evening he changed his approach. Instead of asking about school, he asked, "What made you smile today?" She paused. Then she laughed. She told him about a funny moment in class. That story led to another, then another. Before they realized it, they had been talking for almost an hour. The difference wasn't the amount of talking. It was the quality of listening. Sometimes a thoughtful question opens a conversation that 100 ordinary questions never could. Listening makes you appear more confident. This idea may seem surprising. Many people believe confident people dominate conversations. In reality, research suggests confident people often feel comfortable allowing others to speak. They don't feel pressured to prove themselves every minute. They don't interrupt simply to show what they know. They understand something important. Confidence doesn't always sound loud. Sometimes, confidence sounds patient. Imagine two job candidates. One answers every question with long speeches. The other speaks clearly, then listens carefully before responding. Who seems more composed? Often it's the second person. Why? Because calmness communicates confidence. People who trust themselves don't need to fill every second with words. The mirror effect. Psychologists observe something fascinating. People naturally like those who make them feel understood. Not because of manipulation, but because understanding creates emotional safety. When someone listens carefully, your brain relaxes. You feel accepted. That positive feeling becomes connected with the listener. This is sometimes called a kind of mirror effect. People begin associating you with the comfort they experience around you. Think about that for a moment. You don't have to become the funniest person, or the most persuasive, or the smartest speaker. Sometimes becoming the best listener changes how people remember you forever. A small challenge. Before our next chapter, I'd like to leave you with a simple experiment. Choose one conversation tomorrow. Just one. Your only goal is to listen more than you normally would. Don't interrupt. Don't finish someone's sentence. Don't immediately search for advice. Instead, stay curious. Notice their facial expressions. Notice their tone of voice. Notice what they don't say. Then ask one thoughtful question. You may discover that the conversation feels richer, calmer, and surprisingly effortless. Research suggests that people who feel heard become more open, more cooperative, and more willing to trust. And once trust begins to grow, communication becomes much easier. Take a moment to reflect on someone in your life who always listens without rushing. How do you feel after speaking with them? Chances are, you leave feeling lighter, clearer, valued. Now imagine becoming that person for someone else. That is one of the greatest gifts communication can offer. And in the next chapter, we'll explore another powerful psychological principle. We'll discover why people remember stories far longer than facts and how learning to tell simple, meaningful stories can make your words unforgettable. Chapter 3. Why stories make you sound smarter than facts. Take a moment and think back to your childhood. Can you remember a lesson someone tried to teach you? Maybe you can't remember the exact words, but perhaps you remember a story, a funny moment, a mistake someone made, family memory, or a simple experience that stayed with you for years. Isn't that interesting? Research suggests that our minds naturally remember stories better than isolated facts. Facts inform us. Stories transform us. They allow us to imagine, to feel, to experience. That's why some conversations stay with us for a lifetime, while others disappear almost as soon as they end. Now, you might be wondering, what does storytelling have to do with sounding smart? The answer is simple. Smart communication isn't about proving how much you know. It's about helping other people understand what you know. And stories make understanding easier. The brain loves stories. Imagine I tell you this. Persistence increases the likelihood of success. It's true. It's useful. But it doesn't create much emotion. Now imagine I tell you a different version. A young woman applied for her dream job. She wasn't chosen. She tried again. Another rejection. She improved her skills. She practiced every evening after work. Months later, she applied once more. This time, she got the position. Both examples teach the same lesson. But which one is easier to remember? Most people remember the story. Psychologists observe that stories activate multiple parts of the brain. Instead of simply hearing information, listeners begin imagining the experience. They picture the people, the emotions, the setting. Without realizing it, they become part of the story. And when people feel involved, they remember more. My grandfather's lesson. Let me share another story. Imagine an elderly grandfather sitting outside his small home on a quiet evening. His grandson was frustrated. He wanted to become successful quickly. He wanted everything to happen now. The grandfather didn't begin explaining patience with complicated ideas. Instead, he pointed toward a tiny tree growing nearby. "When I planted that tree," he said gently, "it looked too small to matter. For years, it barely changed. Some neighbors laughed. They said it would never become anything." The grandson looked at the tall tree. Its branches now stretched across the yard, providing cool shade on hot afternoons. Birds rested there. Children played beneath it. The grandfather smiled. The tree wasn't growing slowly. It was growing quietly. Years later, the grandson forgot many conversations. But he never forgot that tree. Research suggests that simple stories become mental shortcuts. Whenever life becomes difficult, the memory returns naturally. No complicated explanation is necessary. Facts tell. Stories show. Imagine you're teaching someone about kindness. You could say, "Kindness improves relationships." That's useful. But now picture this. A cashier accidentally gives an older man the wrong change. Instead of becoming angry, the customer smiles. He gently explains the mistake. The cashier apologizes. She has been working since early morning and is exhausted. The customer thanks her for her hard work before leaving. The next person in line witnesses everything. Without realizing it, that kindness spreads. The mood changes. Everyone becomes a little calmer. Which lesson feels stronger? The story. Because stories allow people to see kindness instead of merely hearing about it. Communication becomes more vivid, more memorable, more human. Why great communicators use everyday examples. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing stories need to be dramatic. They don't. In fact, the most effective stories are often ordinary. Think about conversations with your closest friends. What do you talk about? Missing the bus, burning dinner, getting caught in the rain, your child's funny question, a misunderstanding at work. Simple moments. Yet somehow, those moments become unforgettable because they reveal something about being human. Studies show that people connect most deeply with experiences they recognize. That's why relatable examples are often more powerful than extraordinary adventures. You don't need an exciting life to become an interesting speaker. You simply need to notice the meaning inside everyday experiences. A meeting nobody remembered. Let's imagine another situation. A manager stood before her team. She presented charts, numbers, statistics, performance reports. Everything was accurate. Everything was organized. Yet by the following week, almost nobody remembered what she had said. A month later, she tried something different. Instead of beginning with numbers, she started with a story. She described a customer who had struggled to use the company's product. She explained the customer's frustration. Then she described how one employee patiently solved the problem. Only after telling the story did she show the data. This time, everyone paid attention. People discussed the presentation for days afterward. The numbers hadn't changed. Only the way they were introduced had changed. Research suggests stories provide emotional context. Once emotions become involved, information becomes easier to remember. Stories build trust. Think about someone you've just met. If they immediately begin listing their achievements, you may respect them, but you probably won't feel close to them. Now imagine someone says, "When I first started, I made a mistake I'll never forget." Immediately, they seem more human, more approachable. Psychologists observe that appropriate vulnerability often increases trust. People don't expect perfection. They expect authenticity. Sharing a small mistake doesn't make you appear weak. It often makes you appear honest. Of course, there's balance. Not every conversation requires personal stories. Not every situation calls for emotion. But when the moment is right, a simple story creates a connection that facts alone rarely achieve. The coffee shop lesson. Let me tell you another fictional story. A young university student named Sarah worked part-time in a coffee shop. One afternoon, the cafe became extremely busy. Customers lined up near the entrance. Orders arrived faster than she could prepare them. Feeling overwhelmed, she accidentally spilled coffee across the counter. For a moment, everything stopped. She expected criticism. Instead, an older customer quietly handed her a stack of napkins. He smiled and said, "It looks like today is winning." She laughed. The tension disappeared. Years later, Sarah couldn't remember every customer she served. But she remembered that one sentence. Why? Because it arrived during an emotional moment. Studies show that emotions strengthen memory. That's why encouragement given at the right time often stays with people for years. Words matter, but timing matters too. Becoming a better storyteller. Now, you might be thinking, "I'm not a storyteller." Here's some good news. You already tell stories every day. Whenever someone asks, "How was your weekend?" you tell a story. When you explain why you were late, you tell a story. When you describe something funny your child said, that's a story. The goal isn't becoming dramatic. The goal is becoming clear. Here's a simple structure anyone can use. First, describe the situation. Then, explain the challenge. Finally, share what changed. That's it. Situation, challenge, change. Simple stories are often the strongest. Pause before the lesson. One common mistake is explaining the lesson before telling the story. Imagine hearing this. Never judge people too quickly. Then someone tells a story. The lesson feels predictable. Instead, tell the story first. Allow listeners to discover the meaning. When people reach a conclusion themselves, they remember it much longer. Psychologists observe that people value ideas they discover more than ideas they're simply told. Good communicators guide people toward insight. They don't force it. A conversation worth remembering. Think about someone who changed your life. Perhaps they gave advice. Perhaps they encouraged you. But chances are, you remember a story they shared. Maybe it was about a challenge they overcame, a mistake they learned from, a decision that changed everything. That story became part of your own thinking. Long after the details faded, this meaning remained. That's the quiet power of storytelling. It isn't entertainment. It's connection. A small practice for today. Before our next chapter, I'd like you to try something. Think of one lesson you've learned recently. Maybe it's about patience, confidence, friendship, work, family. Instead of explaining the lesson directly, find a small story that illustrates it. It doesn't need to be dramatic. Perhaps you missed a bus, forgot an appointment, helped a stranger, made a mistake. The simplest experiences often contain the greatest wisdom. Research suggests people remember emotions far longer than information. Stories create those emotions. And when emotions and ideas come together, communication becomes unforgettable. Take a quiet moment now. Think of one story from your own life that still teaches you something today. Hold on to it, because someday, it may become exactly the story someone else needs to hear. In the next chapter, we'll explore one of the most powerful yet overlooked communication skills: how your emotions shape your words before you even begin speaking. You'll discover why emotionally calm people often sound wiser, earn more trust, and influence others, not because they know more, but because they know how to respond instead of react. Chapter 4. Speak with calm. Why emotional control makes you sound smarter. Before we begin this chapter, I'd like you to remember a conversation you regret. Perhaps it happened during an argument. Maybe someone misunderstood you. Maybe you felt criticized. Without thinking, you raised your voice. You spoke too quickly. You said something you wished you could take back. Later, when everything became quiet, you probably thought, I should have handled that differently. If that sounds familiar, you're in good company. Almost everyone has experienced moments like these. Research suggests that our ability to communicate changes dramatically when emotions become intense. The words we choose, the tone we use, even the speed at which we speak, all shifts depending on how we feel. This chapter isn't about pretending you never get angry, or sad, or frustrated. Those emotions are part of being human. Instead, it's about learning how to keep your emotions from controlling your communication. Because the smartest communicators aren't the people who never feel strong emotions. They're the people who know how to respond before those emotions begin speaking for them. The brain changes during strong emotions. Imagine you're driving peacefully down the road. Suddenly, another driver cuts in front of you without warning. Your heart races. Your muscles tighten. Thoughts rush through your mind. Within seconds, your body prepares itself to react. Studies show that during moments of stress, the brain naturally gives more attention to survival than careful reasoning. That's incredibly useful when facing real danger. But in everyday conversations, can become a problem. Instead of listening carefully, we defend ourselves. Instead of asking questions, we make assumptions. Instead of understanding, we react. Now, you might be wondering, why do I always think of the perfect response after the conversation ends? The answer is surprisingly simple. Once your emotions settle, your mind has more space to think clearly. Calmness allows wisdom to return. A small office disagreement. Imagine a woman named Rachel. She had spent several weeks preparing an important project. When she finally presented it to her team, her manager said, I think we need to make some changes. Rachel immediately felt disappointed. Without realizing it, she crossed her arms. Her voice became sharper. I've already spent weeks on this. The room became quiet. The meeting ended awkwardly. That evening, Rachel replayed the conversation in her mind. She realized something important. Her manager hadn't rejected her effort. He had simply suggested improvements. The next morning, she approached him calmly. She said, I've been thinking about yesterday. I'd really like to understand which parts you think could be stronger. The conversation felt completely different. Her manager smiled. He explained his ideas. Together, they improved the project. The problem wasn't the feedback. It was the emotional reaction that came before understanding. Psychologists observe that people often respond not to what was said, but to how it was said. Tone can completely change the meaning of words. Your voice speaks before your words. Think about hearing someone say, "I'm fine." Those two words can mean many different things. A cheerful voice, "I'm fine." A tired voice, "I'm fine." An angry voice, "I'm fine." The words stay exactly the same. The meaning changes completely. Research suggests that listeners pay close attention to tone of voice, facial expressions, and body language. Sometimes they trust those signals even more than the words themselves. That's why speaking calmly matters so much. Calmness communicates confidence, communicates safety, tells people, "I'm here to understand," not, "I'm here to fight." The pause that changes everything. Here's one of the simplest communication habits you can develop. Pause. Just pause. Not for a long time, perhaps 1 or 2 seconds. Imagine someone criticizes your work. Instead of answering immediately, take one slow breath. That tiny pause gives your mind time to catch up with your emotions. It creates space between feeling and reacting. Here's where it gets interesting. To the other person, that pause often looks like confidence. While they expect an immediate emotional response, they see someone thinking carefully instead. Psychologists observe that thoughtful pauses increase the perception of wisdom and self-control. People assume calm speakers are considering their words carefully. Often, they're right. The day I almost sent the wrong message. Let me share a fictional story that feels familiar to many people. A young teacher named Daniel arrived home after a difficult day. He opened his email. There was a message from a parent criticizing one of his classroom decisions. Daniel felt frustrated. Without thinking, he began typing a reply. Every sentence sounded defensive. He explained why he was right. He pointed out everything the parent had misunderstood. Just before pressing send, his internet connection briefly stopped working. Annoyed, he closed the computer. The next morning, he read the email again. This time, it sounded completely different. He deleted the entire response. Instead, he wrote, "Thank you for sharing your concerns. I appreciate hearing your perspective. I'd be happy to discuss this together and find the best solution." A few hours later, the parent apologized for the misunderstanding. The conversation ended positively. Research suggests that delaying important responses during moments of strong emotion often leads to better decisions. Sometimes, the best reply is the one you don't send immediately. Calmness is contagious. Have you ever noticed something remarkable? When one person becomes angry, others often become angry too. Voices rise. Interruptions increase. Nobody truly listens. But the opposite is also true. When one person remains calm, others often begin calming down as well. Psychologists observe that emotions spread naturally through groups. In many situations, people unconsciously match each other's emotional states. This means your calmness doesn't only help you, it influences everyone around you. Imagine a family disagreement. Everyone is speaking at once. Then one person quietly says, "Let's slow down." No shouting, no blame, just calm words. Almost immediately, the energy begins to change. One calm voice can become an anchor in a storm. Strong people don't always speak first. Many people believe strength means having an answer immediately. But studies show that thoughtful communicators often take their time. Imagine being asked a difficult question during a meeting. Some people begin speaking instantly. Others pause. They think. Then they answer. Which person appears more thoughtful? Usually, the one who paused. Silence doesn't always mean uncertainty. Sometimes, it means wisdom is taking its time. The difference between reacting and responding. Let's make an important distinction. Reacting is automatic. Responding is intentional. A reaction happens almost instantly. A response happens after reflection. Imagine someone interrupts you. Your reaction might be frustration. Your response could be, "I'd like to finish my thought first." Same situation. different outcome. Reacting is driven by emotion. Responding is guided by purpose. Research suggests that people who regularly pause before speaking experience fewer unnecessary conflicts, not because they avoid difficult conversations, but because they approach them more thoughtfully. A conversation between friends. Two lifelong friends met for dinner after several months apart. One arrived already stressed from work. The smallest disagreement quickly turned into an argument. For a few minutes, both defended themselves. Neither truly listened. Then one friend quietly smiled. He said, "I think we're both tired. Can we start over?" Those 4 words changed everything. The conversation softened. They laughed. They apologized. They spent the rest of the evening enjoying each other's company. Sometimes intelligence isn't found in winning an argument. It's found in protecting a relationship. Practical habits for emotional communication. Here are a few simple habits you can begin practicing today. First, slow your breathing before difficult conversations. Even one slow breath can help your mind become clearer. Second, lower your speaking speed. People often speak faster when emotions rise. Slowing down naturally reduces tension. Third, ask yourself one question. What outcome do I want from this conversation? That question shifts your focus away from proving yourself and toward solving the problem. Fourth, remember that not every comment deserves a response. Sometimes silence protects your peace better than another sentence. And finally, choose kindness whenever possible. Kindness isn't weakness. Research suggests that calm, respectful communication often leads to greater influence than aggressive communication. People listen longer when they don't feel attacked. Reflection. Take a quiet moment now. Think about the last disagreement you experienced. If you could return to that conversation, what would you change? Would you speak more slowly? Would you ask another question? Would you pause before responding? Would you listen a little longer? You cannot change the past, but every future conversation gives you another opportunity. Every discussion, every meeting, every phone call, every conversation with family or friends is another chance to choose calmness over impulse. And each time you do, your communication becomes a little wiser, a little stronger, and a little more memorable. In the next chapter, we'll explore another fascinating psychological principle: why confident people don't try to win every conversation, and how asking thoughtful questions can make you more persuasive than giving perfect answers. Chapter 5. The smartest people ask better questions. Before we begin, I'd like you to imagine 2 conversations. In the first conversation, one person does almost all the talking. They explain, they advise, they teach. Every time the other person pauses, they quickly fill the silence with another opinion. Now imagine a second conversation. This time, someone asks thoughtful questions. They seem genuinely curious. They don't rush. They allow the other person to think before answering. When the conversation ends, something surprising happens. The second speaker is often remembered as the wiser one. Why? They spoke less, yet they made a stronger impression. Research suggests that people often judge intelligence not only by the quality of someone's answers but also by the quality of their questions. That may seem unexpected. After all, many of us grow up believing that smart people always have the right answers. But psychologists observe something different. The most thoughtful communicators are usually lifelong learners. And learners ask questions. Curiosity is a sign of confidence. Some people avoid asking questions because they're afraid it will make them seem uninformed. They worry others will think they don't know enough. Ironically, the opposite is often true. Imagine you're attending a meeting. One person pretends to understand everything. They nod even when they're confused. Another person politely says, "Could you explain that another way?" Or, "What led you to that conclusion?" Who is more likely to leave with a deeper understanding? The second person. Confidence doesn't mean pretending to know everything. Confidence means being comfortable enough to admit when you don't. Studies show that curious people tend to learn more because they remain open to new information. Their goal isn't protecting their image. Their goal is discovering the truth. The taxi driver. Let me tell you a story. A businessman traveled frequently for work. One evening, he stepped into a taxi after a long flight. Normally, he spent these rides checking emails. But this time, he decided to do something different. He asked the driver, "What's the most interesting thing that's happened to you this week?" The driver smiled. Then he laughed. "No one's ever asked me that." For the next 20 minutes, he shared stories about people he had met. Tourists from different countries. A couple celebrating their anniversary. A little boy who insisted on giving him a drawing instead of a tip. When the ride ended, the businessman realized something. He hadn't learned about transportation. He had learned about people. Months later, he could barely remember the business meeting. But he clearly remembered that conversation. Here's where it gets interesting. The question wasn't complicated. It was simply thoughtful. Sometimes one sincere question opens an entire world. Questions make people feel important. Think about your closest friendships. Do your friends always impress you with brilliant speeches? Probably not. But they likely ask things like, "How have you been? What happened after that? What are you excited about these days?" Those questions communicate something powerful. You matter. Research suggests that one of the deepest human desires is to feel seen and understood. Good questions satisfy that desire. People naturally enjoy talking with those who show genuine interest in their lives. Notice the phrase, genuine interest. That's important. People can usually tell the difference between curiosity and performance. Asking questions simply to appear polite rarely creates connection. Real curiosity does. The difference between closed and open questions. Not all questions create meaningful conversations. Imagine asking, "Did you enjoy your vacation?" The answer might be, "Yes." Conversation over. Now try asking, "What was the best moment of your vacation?" Suddenly, there's room for a story, a memory, an emotion. Psychologists observe that open-ended questions encourage reflection. They invite people to think instead of simply responding. Here are a few examples. Instead of asking, "Was work busy?" Try asking, "What was the most interesting part of your day?" Instead of asking, "Did the meeting go well?" Try, "What surprised you during the meeting?" Instead of asking, "Are you okay?" Try, "What's been on your mind lately?" Small changes, big difference. A teacher's discovery. Imagine a teacher named Maria. Every morning, she greeted her students with the same question. "Does anyone have any questions before we begin?" Usually, the room stayed silent. One day she changed her approach. Instead she asked, "What's one thing from yesterday's lesson that still feels confusing?" Hands immediately went up. Why? Because the question gave students permission to be uncertain. It was specific. It was inviting. It was safe. Studies show that people participate more when questions reduce the fear of giving the wrong answer. Great communicators create environments where curiosity feels welcome. Questions calm arguments. Now, you might be wondering, what about disagreements? Interestingly, questions can be just as powerful there. Imagine someone says, "I completely disagree with you." Many people immediately defend themselves. But another option exists. You could calmly ask, "What makes you see it that way?" Or, "What experiences led you to that opinion?" Notice what happens. The conversation changes. Instead of becoming a battle, it becomes an exploration. That doesn't mean you'll always agree, but understanding grows. Research suggests that people become less defensive when they feel their perspective is being explored rather than attacked. Sometimes the fastest way to influence someone is to understand them first. The barber who remembered everyone. There's a small neighborhood barbershop that many people loved visiting. Not because it offered the fastest haircut. Not because it was the cheapest. People returned because of the barber. He remembered names. He remembered birthdays. He remembered that one customer was training for a marathon. Another had recently become a father. Another was caring for an elderly parent. Every visit began with a question. "How's your daughter enjoying university?" "Did you ever finish building that garden?" "What happened with your interview?" Customers felt remembered. And because they felt remembered, they felt valued. Psychologists observe that remembering small details strengthens relationships. Questions aren't only about gathering information. They're about showing attention. Attention is one of the rarest gifts we can give another person. The trap of assuming. Imagine meeting a new coworker. They seem quiet. Without realizing it, you assume they're unfriendly. But what if they're simply shy, or tired, or having a difficult day? Questions protect us from assumptions. Instead of deciding what someone is thinking, we ask. Instead of filling in the blanks ourselves, we become curious. Studies show that assumptions often create misunderstandings. Curiosity prevents many of them before they begin. One question changed everything. Here's another story. A father noticed his young son becoming unusually withdrawn. For several days he asked, "Is everything okay?" Each time the boy quietly answered, "Yes." One evening, the father sat beside him without speaking. After a minute, he gently asked, "What's something you've been wishing someone would ask you?" The boy looked surprised. Then he smiled. "I wish someone would ask if I'm nervous about changing schools." That simple question opened a conversation that lasted nearly 2 hours. The father realized something important. Sometimes people don't need better advice. They need better questions. The balance between questions and listening. Of course, asking questions isn't about turning every conversation into an interview. Imagine someone asking you 20 questions without sharing anything about themselves. That wouldn't feel natural. Communication is like playing catch. One person shares. The other responds. The ball moves back and forth. Great communicators know when to ask, when to listen, and when to contribute their own experiences. Balance creates comfort. Practical questions you can use today. Here are a few questions that naturally create meaningful conversations. Instead of asking, "How are you?" try, "What's been the best part of your week?" Instead of, "What do you do?" try, "What do you enjoy most about your work?" Instead of, "What happened?" try, "How did that experience change the way you think?" Notice the difference. These questions invite stories, and stories create connection. Reflection. Take a quiet moment now. Think about the conversations you've had this week. How many questions did you ask simply because you were curious? Not to prove a point, not to lead someone toward your opinion, just curiosity. Imagine beginning tomorrow with one goal, not to impress people, not to speak more, simply to become a little more interested in the people around you. Research suggests curiosity strengthens relationships, encourages learning, and increases trust. The smartest communicators don't enter conversations hoping everyone notices how intelligent they are. They leave conversations making other people feel interesting, and that's a rare skill, a skill worth practicing every day. Coming up next, in the next chapter, we'll explore one of the most influential communication habits of all, the psychology of confidence, how to speak so people naturally trust you. You'll discover why confidence has very little to do with speaking loudly or dominating conversations and everything to do with clarity, presence, consistency, and authenticity. This final teaching chapter will bring together everything you've learned so far before we conclude the audiobook with a calm and inspiring reflection. Chapter 6. The Psychology of Confidence. How to speak so people naturally trust you. As we begin this chapter, I'd like you to picture someone you've always considered confident. Perhaps it was a teacher, a leader, a family member, or maybe someone you met only once but never forgot. Now ask yourself a simple question. What made that person seem confident? Was it because they talked the most? Was it because they always had the perfect answer? Or was it something quieter? Maybe they spoke calmly. Maybe they didn't seem rushed. Maybe they listened carefully before answering. Maybe they smiled naturally and made everyone feel comfortable. Research suggests that confidence is often misunderstood. Many people confuse confidence with being loud, or always being right, or dominating every conversation. But psychologists observe that genuine confidence looks very different. Real confidence is calm. It is steady. It doesn't demand attention. It naturally earns it. Confidence begins before you speak. Imagine walking into a meeting. Before you've said a single word, people are already forming first impressions. Not because they're judging you unfairly, simply because the human brain is designed to notice small signals. Your posture, your facial expression, the way you enter the room, whether you seem rushed or relaxed. Studies show that people begin forming impressions within moments of meeting someone. The good news is that these impressions aren't based on perfection. They're based on consistency. Someone who appears calm and genuine often creates more trust than someone trying very hard to appear impressive. Here's where it gets interesting. Confidence begins long before words do. The new teacher. Imagine a young teacher named Samuel. It was his first day standing in front of a classroom. Inside, he felt nervous. His hands were slightly shaking. His heart was beating faster than usual. He looked at the students and thought, "They're going to notice how nervous I am." But something unexpected happened. He smiled. He greeted everyone warmly. He paused before speaking. He explained the lesson clearly. By the end of class, several students commented, "You seem really confident." Samuel laughed to himself. If only they knew. Research suggests that people are often much less aware of our nervousness than we imagine. Most of what we feel remains invisible unless we let it control our behavior. Confidence isn't the absence of fear. It's continuing despite it. You don't need a perfect voice. Many people believe they need a deep voice or a powerful voice to sound confident. But think about the people you enjoy listening to. Their voices are probably different from one another. Some speak softly, some speak quickly, others slowly. What they share isn't the same voice. It's the same presence. Psychologists observe that listeners respond more positively to voices that sound natural than voices trying too hard to sound impressive. In other words, your authentic voice is usually stronger than your performance voice. You don't have to become someone else. You simply have to become comfortable being yourself. The power of speaking slowly. Imagine asking someone for directions. One person speaks so quickly that you struggle to follow. Another explains the same directions slowly and clearly. Who feels more trustworthy? Usually, the second person. Research suggests that speaking at a measured pace increases both understanding and perceived confidence. People often rush because they're afraid silence makes them appear uncertain. Ironically, rushing usually creates the opposite impression. When you slow down, your listeners relax. They have time to understand your ideas, and you have time to choose your words carefully. Remember, confidence rarely hurries. A young entrepreneur's mistake. Let me tell you another story. A young entrepreneur named Hannah was invited to present her business idea. She had prepared for weeks. The moment she stood up, her excitement took over. She spoke quickly. She jumped from one idea to another. She hardly paused for breath. When the presentation ended, people liked her idea. But several admitted they had trouble following her explanation. The next month, she practiced differently. Instead of memorizing every sentence, she practiced slowing down. She intentionally paused after important points. She looked at her audience instead of staring at her notes. The difference was remarkable. People understood her message. They remembered her key ideas. And several investors asked to speak with her afterward. Her knowledge hadn't changed. Only her delivery had. Consistency builds credibility. Imagine someone who constantly changes their opinions depending on who they're talking to. One day they strongly support an idea. The next day they completely reject it. People become uncertain. Not because changing your mind is wrong. Sometimes new information should change our thinking. But constantly shifting simply to please others weakens trust. Studies show that consistency is one of the strongest foundations of credibility. Confident communicators aren't stubborn. They're thoughtful. When they change their opinion, they explain why. They aren't afraid to say, "I learned something new." In fact, admitting you've learned something often increases respect rather than reducing it. The confidence to say, "I don't know." Now, you might be wondering, what if someone asks me something I can't answer? Many people panic. They guess. They pretend. They avoid the question. But truly confident people often respond differently. They simply say, "I don't know," followed by, "But I'd like to find out." Research suggests that honesty increases credibility. People trust those who admit uncertainty more than those who confidently spread incorrect information. Think about your own experiences. Have you ever respected someone more because they admitted they didn't have all the answers? Most of us have. Humility and confidence can exist together. Body language speaks quietly. You don't have to memorize complicated body language techniques. Instead, focus on a few simple habits. Stand comfortably. Relax your shoulders. Make natural eye contact. Avoid constantly looking at your phone while someone is speaking. Face the person you're talking to. Smile when it feels genuine. Psychologists observe that open body language encourages openness in return. People often mirror the emotional signals they receive. When your body communicates calmness, your words become more believable. Confidence is built through repetition. Many people wait until they feel confident before speaking. But confidence rarely works that way. Imagine learning to ride a bicycle. Would confidence arrive before your first attempt? Probably not. Confidence grows after repeated experience. Communication works the same way. Every conversation teaches you something. Every presentation improves your skills. Every difficult discussion strengthens your emotional control. Research suggests that repeated practice reduces anxiety over time. Confidence isn't something you're given. It's something you gradually build. One conversation at a time. A small moment at the grocery store. Here's another simple story. An elderly woman stood in line at a grocery store. The cashier looked unusually tired. Most customers barely noticed. When it became her turn, she smiled warmly and said, "I hope your day gets a little easier." The cashier looked surprised. Then she smiled back. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I really needed to hear that today." The woman didn't deliver a motivational speech. She didn't use impressive words. She simply spoke with kindness and sincerity. Sometimes, confidence isn't about saying more. It's about saying exactly what needs to be said. The goal isn't perfection. Perhaps this is the most important lesson in the entire audiobook. You don't need perfect grammar. You don't need the world's largest vocabulary. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need everyone to agree with you. Communication isn't a performance. It's a relationship. Research suggests that people forgive small mistakes when they sense honesty, warmth, and authenticity. In fact, small imperfections often make us seem more human. And people connect with humans, not perfection. Bringing everything together. Let's pause and reflect on what you've learned so far. You discovered that speaking clearly is more powerful than sounding complicated. You learned that listening creates trust. You saw how stories make ideas unforgettable. You explored how emotional control leads to wiser conversations. You discovered that thoughtful questions deepen relationships. And now you've seen that real confidence grows from authenticity rather than performance. Notice something interesting. None of these skills depend on natural talent. They're habits. Habits anyone can practice. Little by little, day by day, conversation by conversation. Reflection. Take one slow breath. Think about the person you want to become. Not only the speaker, but the listener, the friend, the colleague, the parent, the teacher, the leader. How would that version of you communicate? Would they rush, or would they remain present? Would they interrupt, or would they listen? Would they try to impress everyone, or would they help people feel understood? Your answer to those questions becomes your path forward. Communication is not about becoming the loudest voice in the room. It's about becoming the voice people trust. And trust is earned one conversation at a time. Coming up next, final conclusion. In the final part of this audiobook, we'll gently bring everything together. You'll reflect on the journey you've taken, revisit the most important lessons, and leave with a calm, lasting mindset that you can carry into every conversation for the rest of your life. The conclusion is designed to end the audiobook with a sense of confidence, clarity, and quiet inspiration. Gentle conclusion, your words can change lives. We've reached the end of our journey together. Before you move on with your day, I'd like to invite you to do something simple. Close your eyes for a moment if you can. Take one slow, comfortable breath. Now think about the conversations waiting for you tomorrow. Perhaps you'll speak with your family over breakfast. Maybe you'll greet a coworker, answer a phone call, teach a lesson, help a customer, encourage a friend, or comfort someone who is having a difficult day. Most of those conversations will seem ordinary. In fact, you may forget many of them by next week. But here's something worth remembering. Research suggests that what feels ordinary to you can become unforgettable to someone else. A few kind words, a patient explanation, a thoughtful question, a moment of genuine listening. These small acts often stay with people much longer than we realize. You may never know which conversation changes someone's day, or their confidence, or even the direction of their life. That is the quiet power of communication. Looking back, let's pause and remember the path we've traveled. We began by discovering that smart communicators don't try to sound smart. Instead, they make ideas simple. They understand that clarity is a gift. Complicated language may impress people for a moment. Clear language helps them forever. Then we explored the hidden strength of listening. We learned that people don't always need advice. Sometimes they simply need someone who is willing to hear them without rushing. Listening isn't waiting for your turn to speak. It's making another person feel that their thoughts matter. After that, we talked about stories. Facts inform. Stories connect. Stories help people feel ideas instead of merely hearing them. Even the smallest experience can become meaningful when it carries an honest lesson. Next, we explored emotional control. We learned that calmness is not weakness. It is strength guided by patience. Anyone can react. It takes wisdom to respond. Then we discovered the power of asking thoughtful questions. Curiosity opens doors that certainty often closes. Questions invite people to share. They create understanding before disagreement. Finally, we explored confidence. Not the loud kind, not the kind that seeks attention, but the quiet confidence that comes from authenticity. The confidence to say, I don't know. The confidence to pause before speaking. The confidence to remain calm even when emotions rise. These aren't separate skills. They're connected. Together, they create communication that people trust. The ripple effect. Imagine dropping a small stone into a quiet lake. The stone is tiny, but the ripples travel far beyond the place where they entered the water. Words work the same way. A single encouraging sentence can inspire someone for years. A thoughtful compliment can restore confidence. A patient conversation can repair a damaged relationship. An honest apology can begin healing. Studies show that positive social interactions contribute to stronger relationships, greater well-being, and increased cooperation. We often underestimate the influence of our everyday conversations because their effects are rarely immediate. Sometimes your words become part of another person's inner voice. Think about that. Perhaps someone once told you, I believe in you. Maybe a teacher encouraged you. Maybe a parent comforted you. Maybe a friend reminded you not to give up. You may not remember the exact day, but you remember how those words made you feel. Now imagine becoming that voice for someone else. A final story. Let me leave you with one last story. Imagine an elderly man who visited the same neighborhood park every morning. He carried no special title. He wasn't famous. He wasn't wealthy. He simply enjoyed sitting on a wooden bench, watching people begin their day. Every morning, he greeted strangers with a warm smile. To children, he waved. To runners, he wished them a good morning. To tired parents, he offered a kind word. One day, a young man sat beside him. The young man looked exhausted. Life had become overwhelming. After several minutes of silence, the older man simply asked, How are you, really? The question was gentle. There was no judgment, no pressure. The young man hesitated. Then, for the first time in weeks, he spoke honestly. They talked for nearly an hour. When the conversation ended, the young man thanked him. You probably don't realize it, he said, but I needed someone to ask me that today. The older man smiled. "I've learned something over the years," he replied. "People rarely remember perfect conversations. They remember conversations that helped them feel less alone." Research suggests that feeling understood is one of the strongest foundations of healthy human relationships. Sometimes the greatest gift we can offer isn't brilliant advice. It's our presence. Promise to yourself. As this audiobook comes to an end, I'd like to invite you to make a small promise. Not to me, to yourself. Promise that you'll slow down before speaking. Promise that you'll listen with genuine curiosity. Promise that you'll choose clarity instead of complexity. Promise that you'll ask one more thoughtful question. Promise that you'll remember that every person you meet is carrying a story you cannot fully see. Some people are celebrating. Others are grieving. Some are confident. Others are quietly struggling. Kind communication doesn't require knowing everyone's story. It simply requires remembering that a story exists. Psychologists observe that empathy strengthens communication because it shifts our attention from ourselves to the person in front of us. Empathy doesn't mean agreeing with everyone. It means trying to understand before judging. And that single habit has the power to transform relationships. Your next conversation. When this audiobook ends, nothing dramatic will happen. You won't suddenly become the world's greatest speaker. You'll still make mistakes. You'll occasionally say the wrong thing. You'll sometimes misunderstand others. And they'll sometimes misunderstand you. That's part of being human. But something can change. You can become more aware, more patient, more intentional. Imagine approaching your next conversation with one simple goal. Not to win, not to impress, not to prove yourself. Simply, to leave the other person feeling respected. If you achieve that, you've already become a better communicator. And if you repeat that choice, day after day, conversation after conversation, year after year, you'll become someone people naturally trust. Someone people feel comfortable around. Someone whose words carry weight, not because they're loud, but because they're thoughtful. One final reflection. Before we say goodbye, I'd like you to ask yourself 3 quiet questions. First, how do I want people to feel after speaking with me? Not what do I want them to think about me, but how do I want them to feel? Respected? Encouraged? Understood? Safe? Choose that feeling. Let it guide your words. Second, what communication habit will I practice this week? Perhaps speaking more slowly, listening without interrupting, telling a meaningful story, or asking one thoughtful question every day. Small habits create lasting change. Third, who in my life needs my full attention today? Parent, a child, a friend, a colleague, a student, a neighbor. Think of that person. When you next see them, be fully present. Sometimes your attention is the most valuable gift you can give. Farewell. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope these ideas stay with you, not as rules to memorize, but as habits to practice. Because communication isn't perfected in a single day. It grows through thousands of ordinary conversations. And those ordinary conversations shape extraordinary lives. Remember, the smartest people don't speak to prove their intelligence. They speak to create understanding. They don't listen to prepare a reply. They listen to learn. They don't use words to build walls. They use words to build bridges. May your words bring clarity instead of confusion. May your questions inspire curiosity. May your stories encourage hope. May your calmness create peace. And may every conversation help someone, including you, feel a little more understood. Thank you for listening. Until next time, take care of your words, because in the end, your words help shape the world around you one conversation at a time. The end.